I left DLA Piper at the end of June, and I decided to take the whole of the summer off. I wanted a fire break between the career that I had before and what I do next. I think that was a really productive thing to do. So I'm sitting here talking to you in October after that 3-month break. And I'm doing two things really. One is I am a very part-time professor at the School of Law at University of Leeds, so that's taking up some of my time. And then the other thing I'm doing is I guess just figuring out what the art of the possible is in terms of what else I do career-wise in the next stage of my career. So I'm just talking to lots of clients and contacts. So the idea of academia started probably quite a few years ago, if I'm honest. I think I'd had a conversation with the School of Law in Leeds before lockdown, and then I'd agreed to start doing some teaching with them, and then start in a longer term role once I left DLA. And then with lockdown, that all changed slightly. So in the end, I agreed to take up a very part-time role with the School of Law, and that started actually in September 21. So more than a year ago now. So I decided I'd kind of parallel stream that with my exit from DLA, because I thought that would be a nice way of bridging the two careers. So why did I decide to do that? Probably for two reasons. One is if you've been in the business of law for over 30 years, as I had been, you kind of, at least in my case, I yearned for the days when actually I was a proper lawyer doing black letter law. And so I saw the opportunity to get involved in the more academic side of things as a way of rekindling that interest for me. And I suppose the other aspect was that I'm very conscious when you've been 30 years or so in practice that you have a lot of information up there, and I'm really quite keen to impart that information to future generations and improve, I guess, the quality of knowledge and understanding out there. So those are my two reasons. So my subject area is public procurement law and practice. That's what I've done for 20 plus years at DLA Piper. And what I do with my students is very much focus on the practice of public procurement. So it's very important that you understand the kind of, the basic theoretical constructs, but what I'm interested in my life and practice, and what I think is interesting to students, is how does it work on the ground? How do you ensure there's a successful outcome of a tendering process? How do you manage risk so that you can avoid challenge? So yeah, it's very much a case of bringing to bear those kind of practical skills. So all my students are overseas students because they're all postgrad students, and to be frank, this is one of the challenges of the UK academic system at the minute, that we that are essentially the undergraduate programs are significantly funded by postgraduate programs which are peopled by students from overseas. So I think one of the challenges we all face in the school is this difficulty of interacting with students whose language, first language isn't usually English. So you have to work. I mean, because it's postgraduate, you have to, you're not really teaching or lecturing. You're meant to be stimulating learning, and so the learning is very much seminar based and problem based, but you have to work quite hard because the students are, as I say, they're maybe new to the UK and English isn't their first language, etc., etc. So I think ultimately I would aspire to teaching, say, third year undergrads. I think that might be, quite a different teaching journey. It does help if you've got a landing point in a university. I mean, I'd actually taught at Leeds University quite a few decades ago, as it happened, and I'd friends and colleagues there. So I kind of, I'd always vaguely kept that connection, and I probably wouldn't have been approached if I hadn't had that, because they were keen that I come on board. So yeah, I think they are quite they are quite impenetrable. I suppose, you start with what you're interested in, and if you're a corporate lawyer or a litigation lawyer or whatever, then I guess try and identify who in the universities would have does some academic research in the area in which you're active, and connect with them. And that's probably a good way to start. And one of the things you will find is that, certainly my experience has been that everybody is incredibly helpful and keen to bring you on board and to help you be successful. Everybody's also incredibly overworked. So it is a sector that is, I think it's really hard on the staff, the teaching staff. There's, COVID didn't help, of course, with all of that. But yeah, I think the university system is trying to find its feet again post COVID, and staff have had quite a battering. And you'll have read about the strikes and so on. So yeah, I mean, I don't think, I wouldn't want anybody to think it's it's a kind of, if you like, a rosy tinted option. It's it's not a profession without its challenges. But for my part, what I find quite interesting is the quality of my colleagues, the fact that they are also intellectually curious, and in the practice of law, you're very much focused on how do I find a solution for my client. But in academia, you're much more interested in why. Why is the rule like this? Is there a better way of doing it? And yeah, I find that quite stimulating.